it's great to be CEO, and I'm the one who's lucky enough to come along and chat about the charity, but it's a team effort. You know, I stand on the shoulders of giants. I've got these amazing team of dream makers who are deeply passionate about supporting children, who have great job titles. I mean, who wouldn't like to be called a dream maker?
Welcome to Radical Transformation, where we get up and close and personal with the leaders transforming their organisations. I'm Mike Swetman, I'm your host, and in this episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by Lisa King OBE. A bit about Lisa. After a successful career in PR, Lisa moved into the charity sector, nearly 20 years ago when she joined Refuge. And she went on to become Director of Communications and External Relations there. Now, at the time when Lisa joined Refuge, it was just a small charity. And by the time she left, it had become a household name supporting thousands of abused women and children here in the UK. Last year, Lisa was invited to go and join Dreams Come True as their CEO. So congratulations, Lisa. And this allowed her to continue her passion for tackling social injustice with also helping children who have a tough start in life. It's also a charity that's very close to my heart because along with some of the team here at Morpheus, we were thrilled to be invited to run for Dreams Come True in the London Marathon. So they made our dream come true personally by allowing us to take up a golden ticket to represent the charity. So we're really proud to have represented Dreams Come True, raised funds for them, but also had some first-hand insight into some of the great work they're doing for kids who've had a tough start to life here in the UK. So once again, Lisa, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks very much, Mike, for what was a lovely introduction. I'm very pleased to be here.
Pleasure is ours. We're thrilled to have you on the show, Lisa. So without any further ado, let's dive straight in. So tell us, how did you get into the charity sector in the first place?
So you're right, as your intro said, I started my career very much in a commercial PR agency world. I worked for the majority of that time at Chime Communications, for brands like Tesco and Nescafe, things like that. And then we, as a team, had an opportunity to actually do a pro bono pitch for a PR campaign for Refuge, domestic abuse charity, which I went and did. I'd been asked to did it with some fellow colleagues. And after the pitch and the campaign had successfully rolled out, I was offered by the then CEO an opportunity to work at Refuge, which was a complete curveball. I had no intention if I'm really honest, to work in the charity sector. And I was a bit resistant. I had a pathway going forward that looked quite good at this PR agency. And to move to Refuge was an unknown quantity, a tiny charity, with a great job title. It was head of PR. But really that just meant head of myself. So I was going to be going in and just like flying solo without all the benefits that you get in the commercial world either. And it felt a bit risky. And I remember having some family advice suggesting that perhaps that wasn't the best pathway. But I guess the truth is I was just so horrified with the statistics that were shared with me when discussing the work of Refuge and through the campaign that I'd run, that I'd understood. I couldn't believe that domestic abuse was such a huge issue affecting so many people. I'd had a pretty good education, and yet my education in that respect had utterly failed me. I had no understanding of the numbers of women and children experiencing abuse in our country today. And I guess I was horrified from the get-go, and I couldn't believe it was such an injustice. And so I decided to take the plunge, take the risk, push myself in that direction, and I never looked back. And it's something that just grew inside of my heart and my passion very quickly. I had some critical moments where I met family members where some absolutely horrific things had happened to women that they had loved, and it became a vocation really from that point forth to raise as much awareness and as I possibly could, bring about as much change as I could, and threw myself into it.
Brilliant. Cast your mind back, if you will. You said you didn't plan to get into the charity sector, but you found yourself there in a fantastic charity. What skills were you able to draw upon that you'd acquired in your time in the private sector working in PR that you were able to apply, when you joined Refuge and ever since? Can you share with the listener some of those skills?
Yeah, I mean, to work in a top end PR agency with some big clients, Procter and Gamble were another one of the clients. I mean, you have to be able to juggle an awful lot of priorities. You have to have a fair amount of commercial acumen to be able to work in that environment, to be very task focused and driven and have very clear kind of ways in which to deliver the pretty significant ambitions of those corporate organisations. It is a tough gig to work in a PR agency where you can quickly lose a contract to another agency, and the churn can be quite high. So you have to be able to perform and deliver. And I think it was those skills really that put me on a pathway to bringing quite a lot of commercial awareness to a charity role, first at Refuge, and then really more significantly, I think now in my role as CEO at Dreams Come True.
Okay, brilliant. And I can imagine that time at in PR was pretty dog eat dog, as you say. You could easily lose a contract.
Yeah.
And therefore you need to be super competitive and you need to be on your game all the time. Is that also the case in the charity sector? Is there is there a huge amount of competition for maybe limited funds out there at the moment, and charities all chasing, or in many cases, the similar kind of businesses and asking them to dig deep and support them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some truth in that. It is a tough world for charities to raise funds. Our charitable funds come entirely from voluntary contributions. We receive no statutory funding. That's a lot of responsibility to carry, and it can be, very competitive, and you're up against obviously very big charities. I would consider Dreams Come True doing vital work. There are kind of 11 employed staff members, but we're pretty much a boutique small charity. And that is hard to get the cut through when you're competing against some of the big ones. But that said, if you tell the story well, I think my PR skills help in that respect also, and you are able to evidence well the impact that you have, the significant contribution that charity makes, then you are able to win those opportunities, and you have to take a pragmatic approach and go for the opportunities where you stand the greatest chance, and be better, I think, at focusing on some smaller, more focused opportunities than perhaps taking a more scattergun approach and being, less considered, and ensuring that you have more chance of success in that respect. And I think that is our current approach, and one of the areas where Dreams Come True has transformed a bit to be more focused and thereby more effective, and that is beginning to help us grow our sustainable base of funding.
Brilliant. I'd like to explore Refuge again, if I may. When you joined it, it was a really small charity. I think by your own admission, I think probably helping hundreds, maybe a few thousand women who were, in abusive relationships every year. By the time you left 19 years later, I think it had totally transformed to become a household name, hadn't it? Supporting thousands of abused women and sometimes their daughters in the UK. How did you help transform Refuge's reach and impact? And what life and business lessons have you taken away from that experience over that time?
So, I mean, certainly joining Refuge as head of myself in the PR world was a big job to take on. I worked really hard in those early days to, speak to the women who had received support from the services and to work with survivors, amazing women from all walks of life who were brave and bold and shared their often, experiences that really should have meant that they were, they'd, been killed or were no longer here today. They had survived horrific abuse. And they were willing to share their stories, and in doing so, I was able to build some significant campaigns with some high-profile media partners over many years to draw attention to those, to the statistics, to the stories, reach people as a result of it, influence government as a result of that, who would listen and look at the papers and the campaigns that we ran. And we really ran them through a cross-section of all the different types of titles that we have. We didn't have the digital world then, it's hard to believe, but it was literally, the print media and the campaigns that we ran, which we did with entirely pro bono support from agencies. And those agencies presented some pretty bold and brave campaigns, and we were exactly that. Me and my senior team and my boss at the time, Sandra Hawley, very brave and very bold and willing to put our head above the parapet to speak about domestic abuse which is not a sexy subject. It is life and death. And to make people, aware of the epidemic that was going on behind closed doors in the country today. So that progressed year to year and grew, and I slowly but gradually built a little team up as the years trotted on. But the pivotal moment, really, the seismic sea change moment, I think, that occurred was essentially COVID in March 2020, when the world went into lockdown very quickly. And that affected Refuge significantly. I mean, in so many ways. I have a vivid memory of being in my kitchen one Friday night and just desperately trying to call contacts who might be able to find us laptops or mobile phones, and asking our head of finance, Ozzy, who was driving around the country, to see if he could get any kit and equipment before it ran out from Currys, so that we could ensure that the National Domestic Abuse Helpline that we ran could continue. It had never, ever operated anywhere other than in a very secure, carefully confidential location, and it had to move. I mean, it was unheard of to people's bedrooms to carry on to provide that system to women, and we had to ensure that the tech was not going to be compromised in any way, and our data. And simply getting the equipment in itself was a huge challenge. And standing there on a Friday night and pretty much, crying down the end of the phone, it makes me emotional to think about it, but desperately trying to get this kit to keep the show on the road so that we could answer the phones for the women who were calling us. Because as lockdown kicked in, those phone lines just went off the scale. Women called and called and called because they were suddenly literally frightened for their lives. Women who had experienced domestic abuse were suddenly facing levels of abuse and severity of abuse that had never been seen before, because they were literally locked in with their perpetrators and unable to leave. And it was frightening, and we shared the statistics and the data with the media, and I have never known a media moment in it in my life, and I'm sure I shall never, I hope, see one ever again where, we had fantastic support from the BBC, and June Kelly is a prominent journalist at the BBC who supported us massively in ensuring that we could get the statistics, the data out, and I did media interview after media interview after media interview, because there was very little else to talk about in lockdown world, and because people could perhaps sympathise with what it might be like to be locked in, having been locked in themselves in those very early days of strict lockdown measures, and to think about what it could be like for a woman and a child in that environment, and the fear and the essential survival pathway that those people were on. And when at Refuge, the fundraising team did a great job too, and pivoted very quickly and reached out to people to raise funds. I did too, endlessly on the media, and we generated a vast amount of income never seen before in the domestic abuse world, and a vast number of followers that to this day have increased significantly the reach and support that Refuge receives, because we were able to essentially create an understanding with people who had never even thought about domestic abuse before, had never known the statistics, much like I had never known when I joined those many moons ago. And that, I think, was a pivotal moment in terms of change at Refuge, and kind of underpins all that they're doing today, really, and successfully so. And I guess the lessons that I can take from that are to always expect the unexpected. You can never be prepared for everything. Look what lockdown will have done for us all in so many different ways. To pick up the phone and ask people for help, because that's actually a truism of my entire career for charities, is to ask, and people will give. People are very generous when you ask and you seek support. I have secured much pro bono support in my time working for charities, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. And I guess the other, as we all know, is to be agile and pivot and change what is one programme of work when it's necessary to do so to another, and be, reactive when you need to, and to drop the strategy, to drop that which was in train, and do what is necessary when crises arise. But I've a lot of lessons taken forth, and a great sense of pride to know that we were able to keep the phone lines running, to reach many women, and to come up with creative ways of reaching women during that period also.
brilliant story. In terms of continuing to deliver that service, that duty of care to the women that you were serving in the community, how did you pivot? What creative ways did you come up with to continue to deliver that service when you couldn't necessarily walk through their front door anymore or bring them to an event because of the lockdown that you found yourselves in? So how did you respond to that? How did you lead the business, the charity through that change and really get creative? What was the process you went through to do that?
Well, we as an organisation couldn't do it on our own. We couldn't do it at all because we had a diktat from government to ensure lockdown measures were followed. But what we could do, because we had good government relations, and I was lucky enough to join a summit with the Prime Minister at the time to lobby on the behalf of domestic abuse victims across the country, not just those that Refuge supported, but others, and other organisational leaders did the same, to ensure that level of understanding and the need for exemptions so that this critical level of 999 support could continue throughout lockdown, to keep the refuges open, to ensure that the government led a campaign that reached women, and a campaign that also made women abundantly clear that no matter if they were experiencing domestic abuse, they were exempt from lockdown and that they could leave, and that we put that programme of work in place. We knew we couldn't do it ourselves, so we looked to those who could, and as a collective group of organisations worked to ensure that that was put in place so that support could continue.
So really it was a time for actually to come together as one, different charities coming together, recognising that there's a time of immense challenge, a challenge that never been faced before, once in a lifetime set of events. And so it was a case of building those partnerships that maybe existed already, but really coming together to lobby the government, work with them very quickly to be able to continue to find a pathway to deliver the service. Absolutely.
It was a unique moment in that respect where many organisations, very established, very successful in the domestic abuse sector, but also in need of great funding, also came together to tell that story and were heard by the government and gained quite a lot of prominent exposure, which has been very helpful, was critical at the time and has been of much value ever since.
Got it. Talk to me about funding for a minute, because overnight your funding model will have been impacted radically. I'd imagine clearly events like the London Marathon, which may have been key fundraisers, stopped overnight. It wasn't possible to fundraise in the way you had before. Again, how did you pivot? How did you respond to that? How did you ensure that the cash would keep flowing? What innovation did you take? What creativity did you put into play, and maybe that still exists today, to make sure that the tap didn't turn off completely?
Yeah, I mean, I can only talk to the time at which, I left Refuge a few years back. But at the time, we had a small base of what are called individual supporters, people who give maybe a £5 or a £10 every month, and unique kind of one-off donations. Also, it was a small pool. Those figures absolutely, went up by huge amounts overnight, with very generous individuals hearing the comms or the media stories that were being placed, talking about women and the statistics, and generously gave. The public were fantastic. It was, in large part to the BBC and the huge reach. I mean, our story was being told at the 6 a.m, news, 1 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock. For a PR person, that's like your dream, baby. That is never going to happen again in my life, in my world. But, and the figures and the reach were phenomenal. Our corporate partners, some of them I had brought on and worked with for a long time, like Avon and Benefit, makeup brand. They made additional grant donations, and many others, and new partners like Barclays came to the table. And others I'm woefully forgetting, I'm sure. But they were absolutely amazing and deeply generous, and gave a huge sense of commitment. Developed campaigns themselves, actually, that I've forgotten till now, that helped raise awareness, reach women, give them reassurance, let them know that they were not alone. Extra products for our refuges for women who had turned up with literally nothing but, holding their kid's favourite toy. So, a vast array of support. It will, I hope, never be seen in such a kind of, a moment in time again, because the fear factor for those women was so great. But yeah, a phenomenal turnout of support, and great to see, because domestic abuse is not an easy subject to talk about, and it was it was hugely supported, which was amazing.
Fantastic. You miss your time there, don't you? I can tell.
Well, I'm very passionate about domestic abuse and women's issues, and I do kind of a bit of work here and there I can, supporting where I'm able to. But I mean, I've been able now I left Refuge, I took some time out to consider my pathway going forward, and actually I feel incredibly best at where my path has taken me to. I'm CEO of Dreams Come True, and whilst it's outside of the violence against women and girls space, the work that Dreams Come True does for children focuses so very much on social injustice, but through a lens of deprivation. And for children who have serious illnesses, disabilities and lifelong conditions. And there's a personal story for me there which weds me deeply to Dreams Come True. My son has moderate needs, not severe needs, but moderate needs. He has autism and global development delay. He's 14. He's gorgeous, amazing, funny and cheeky and all those things 14-year-olds should be. And he goes to a special educational needs school. And they also support children with severe needs. So I have seen over these last certainly 5 years and been exposed much more to a much greater level of need that many children have, and the requirements that those children have. And I am delighted to be working, and actually today is a year in post, which is very pertinent to doing this. Thank you, this podcast, to be able to blend those two areas of my life and expand my skills also to a much broader brief, beyond comms and policy and external relations, to that which is all things from, rolling your sleeves up and helping, with financial matters, to fundraising, to, finance and HR, as well as kind of, my CEO world. So yes, it's a great experience to be at Dreams Come True, and I've done a lot in the last year, and I'm looking forward to doing an awful lot more coming forth.
Tell us about the last year, Sadie. It's a significant milestone, 1 year today. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What's your legacy so far, do you think, as CEO of Dreams Come True?
I think it's building what looks and feels like a great team in place at the moment. It's great to be CEO, and I'm the one who's lucky enough to come along and chat about the charity, but it's a team effort. I stand on the shoulders of giants. I've got these amazing team of dream makers who are deeply passionate about supporting children, who have great job titles. I mean, who wouldn't like to be called a dream maker? And who are supporting children day in, day out. That work is very powerful, and they are very hardworking. Same with our fundraising team, small team, some longer in post, some newer in post. Very excited about some of the new corporate opportunities that are coming to us. A kind of drive to build more community fundraising and events. An increasingly strong finance department where we've put much more kind of auditing in place and processes and practices. And also, working with a phenomenal social media expert who has taken our channels to, be much better received, much more high impacting, with much more reach. And one of the partnerships that we are soon to bring on is as a result of our profile having improved so much on social media. So there's lots of different areas. All of those areas we've looked at and we've worked to, much like I said earlier, be less focused, doing less, but much better, making sure that we're very focused and kind of clear with what our objectives are, and that we are aware of each other's objectives, and much more able to work as one team to then deliver those objectives. That is very common in charities, and probably very so in small charities. And of course, to want to do as much as you possibly can, but often to less effect. So we've been working to really streamline what we do, be really clear and focused, improve our processes and practices, and that is already showing some great impact. The Dream Team supported more children than ever before last financial year, 3,253, which we're all really proud of. And we have been able to put some strong programmes of work in place to underpin that, more than the charities ever had before. So we've got, still some work to do, and some, to ensure that we're completely sustainable and robust. But we are moving in that pathway, and by year end, I think we'll be in a fantastic position.
That's brilliant. Lisa, I read that the UK has something like 27% of the child population living in poverty, which is an astounding number, really, in a first world economy. And I'd imagine that number has only increased in the last few years with, the combination of, the COVID and the cost of living crisis, etc. That's a lot of kids, isn't it, that need your help right now. How do you prioritise where to invest the funds that you have? How do you make those difficult decisions as a leader?
So, you're right, Mike, about those figures. They are horrific as they stand. And a figure that I have come across more recently is that 27% is going to increase by a further 500,000 children, so 500,000 children by the end of this year. And that is all down to the economic crisis that the world is in today. So our work has never been needed more. That is very, very true. And that is, abundantly clear with the number of requests that we receive to ensure we reach the children who need us most. So those with the high needs and who live in very deprived areas. We work with referrers, so we make sure that we receive the dream request through a professional who is working with that child. So someone who is maybe in the special educational needs school, or perhaps in the healthcare team or occupational health. So the whole kind of different, or social services, those kind of main areas are the ways in which the referrals come to us, because we need to make sure that we are sometimes reaching a hard to reach audience of children and families in socially deprived areas. So it gives us a good route through to reaching people who need us most. One of our kind of primary objectives for this year is to build our referral network to ensure that we are as linked in with the SEN special educational needs networks, with the GPs and health professionals through their groups, to ensure that we can increase our referral pathways. But that said, we receive a large number every month. We open our dream portal at the beginning of each month to receive our dreams, but the number of dreams that we can offer is dependent upon the amount of funding that we have. We review that quarterly and half yearly to see if we're able to increase that number. At the moment, we've got funding in place to ensure that we will reach the same number of children as we did do last year, around 3,200. So that's great. But the more we raise, the more dreams we can deliver. So it's very much about building our portfolio of fundraising, building new relationships all the time with new corporates who might want to support us, which in turn means we can do much more work. So we're strategic in the way that we bring our dreams in, but we have to make difficult choices sometimes, because actually we receive a large number of dreams come through, and we can't always deliver them.
And that must be tremendously difficult for you as a team to make those decisions, which can really make an impact to some of the children you support, physically, mentally as well, and the community they live in. I think that brings me on to my next question, which is, how can our listeners help more dreams come true?
Well, I think, find out more about what we do on our website. And if you feel that this subject resonates, if you have any kind of CSR programs of work that focus on social deprivation or poverty or the challenge of the economic climate in today's world, then we would be of relevance. If you have a focus on children, and especially children with serious illnesses, disabilities or life-limiting conditions, then we'll be a perfect fit, and we are ready to receive any requests from anyone who would like to work with us. I think one of the benefits of a small charity is that we can demonstrate so very clearly what that impact will bring to children, what that means to us. If we are able to find the funding, we will do, but if we can generate more funding than that which we have in our budget for this year, then we will be able to deliver more dreams. That would be a great end result for us to find ourselves come, the 31st of March 2024. And that is what we're aspiring to. But we can't do that on our own. We can only do that with new friends and organisations. And if you work with us, I think the benefit is it's quite win-win. We will be able to show what we're doing. We will be, very keen to talk to colleagues, attend breakfast meetings, share our work. We can build exciting initiatives to take part in. I mean, I didn't know until I joined Dreams Come True that every year there is World Dream Day. So on the 25th of September 2023, there we will celebrate World Dream Day. And we're building a programme of work for corporate organisations or individuals to help us raise money through. So, if that sounds something that, would be of interest or excite anyone listening, then we would be very keen to hear and delighted to have you contact us.
Fantastic. Well, we'll push that date out nearer the time for you.
Thank you.
Tell us a bit more about some of those initiatives, because I know that you're doing some great things in the community, and I've heard about being able to build playgrounds and give something to people physically where you can say, I've made that investment, and in return this is what it's achieved. So your money really goes into something visible and physical that really makes a difference in the community. But can you give again our listeners some examples of types of initiatives they could put their investment and their money into? Yeah,
so I mean, every dream that comes to us is bespoke. So it'll be very much tailored towards a specific child, and some may be completely unexpected and like we've never done before. I mean, one we're doing at the moment, which is a wheelchair that has been specifically adapted for being able to access and go on the beach. So it's kind of very robust. This child lives very close to the beach. Sees, I don't know what gender the child is, sees family going on the beach and playing, and is unable to partake in the same way. This wheelchair that we're going to provide is going to enable us to give that child that opportunity to be in that family environment and join in too. That's wonderful. What a great thing to do. We're going to film that dream, and I'll be able to share that in due course. But I mean, loads of dreams of all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Dreams for children who may be, unable to leave their bedrooms and live in their beds primarily, to ensure that we put in adapted technology that can be voice activated from their beds to turn the telly on, to turn the lights on, to turn the LEDs on, equipment that would otherwise not be available to that child. We've done amazing things like put Akivo beds in school so that a child who is very disabled, who has otherwise, until then only been able to access remote education from their bedrooms, can be able to lie in a bed at school that has special hoists so that they can use the toilets as and when are needed and move from space to space as required. Those sorts of equipment are way out of a budget for any school to ever be able to provide. But that will mean that we have been able to give that child access to education, to the classroom, to being in kind of a year group with other children. I mean, that an experience that would otherwise have been completely out of reach.
So it's absolutely life-changing. I mean, that example is...
Yeah, life-changing and real, increasingly, they are moments of magic with real lasting impact is a little line that we say, but they're increasingly very much dreams with purpose for children that really does give them access to kind of new aspects of life. I heard a really moving story of one of our community dreams. So we have kind of two categories, that for individuals and bigger ones for community dreams that, do come at greater budget but impact greater numbers of children. In a community centre, they had a community room, which was really just a space for people to gather in. There was nothing to do. It was very empty and it was kind of very decrepit. So a whole remakeover of that room took place. But within it, the main kind of attraction that the dream request had come through for was a large sensory room for the floor. So the sensory room had the ability to kind of have lights on it, moving images on it, music on it, and touch response on it. So some of the children who were wheelchair bound were able to then lie on the floor and roll on the floor and feel like they were swimming with the fishes, or then it would change to the leaves kind of moving under the floor. We've got some great photos of that dream in play, and the quotes that we have from the family members and the community leaders who put that request in are very moving and joyful, really, to see that in play. It's that makes this job an amazing job to have.
Some amazing stories, and how could you not want to get involved and do something for dreams come true? Right. Just tell us a bit about your vision now, looking, if you can, 4 or 5 years forward now. Where do you see see the charity being in 5 years' time? Where do you see dreams come true being in the ecosystem, particularly around kids and social deprivation? What's your vision for it?
Well, I mean, I think my vision will be achieved after this brilliant podcast, because I'd be hoping to increase the funding and the support that we have, in the next 2 years, threefold, so that we can increase our number of dreams accordingly. It'd be great to be able in the next couple of years have reached a 10,000 mark of children that we can support. That would be fantastic. So delivering more dreams, reaching more children, and pushing that number up and up, because children in today's world have never needed the charity more. So that very much is in my kind of, in my remit and my want to deliver with the team. But I would also very much like to see us be able to focus more on a policy agenda to ensure that we are aligning with other charities that speak up for children with additional needs who live in poverty, for their voice to align maybe with some of the poverty charities, so sort of outside of our maybe wish granting space, but certainly to that where they have an agenda to raise awareness of the kind of increasing levels of deprivation that this country is seeing, and to bring our voice and lend our support to those campaigns. I would like to see that happen very much, and I think we could bring, a good voice to that. We're not ready to do that yet. We need to deliver our programme of work and ensure that we're, as I said, I guess is my little theme, to do what we're doing, to do it really well, and know that we've done that and that that's sustained. But to then look at that policy angle and that campaigning opportunity in the nearish years to come.
Fantastic. And more immediately, you mentioned you've got World Dreams Day in September. You've obviously got the London Marathon coming up again next year, which I know you have some golden tickets for, but are there any other initiatives that people can get involved with now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have a phenomenal number of events, and I know, as a marathon runner yourself, Mike, 4 dreams come true, and having done it in, I think, 3 hours, 25 minutes, a very good job on the feet and fantastic fundraising also. Our team, and Emma Russ in particular, is there with a whole programme of running events, trekking events, that happen as a calendar of initiatives. So if you're a keen runner or cyclist, there are events there. We're doing a big skydive with a corporate partner, IMRG, on the 14th of October. I think there's a team of about 15 of them jumping from the skies to raise funds for Dreams Come True. So literally jumping for dreams, which is amazing. So if a bit of an adrenaline rush takes your fancy, that sounds like an option. Or we've had amazing kind of members of the public and a team from Salesforce take part in February in an Arctic trek, which I really would have loved to have done and have thought about doing, but I think as I'm getting older, my Raynaud's and cold fingers won't allow for that. But it looked like a phenomenal challenge on an Arctic mission, and they raised around 42k for us, which was amazing. So there is from the day, kind of the calendar of events like marathons and running events, to the extreme wonderful Arctic trek opportunities. But really we can create any element and any idea and support any way in which anyone would like to raise funding for us.
Yeah, it's an amazing breadth of opportunities you offer there. And again, I'd encourage our listeners to get involved and support this, your fabulous charity. Last question, sort of looking back, if we may, for a minute, what advice would you give to the 20-year-old Lisa now?
Well, I would certainly say, I should have been better at researching and knowing about violence against women and girls, and where was my feminism back in my 20s? But luckily that all changed for me in my 30s. And I guess it's that kind of, being open to change and embracing change, and being willing to, bring your experiences, personal and professional to your world if you're able to. I think that I've been very lucky to have these opportunities and to have had kind of a number of kind of different change moments in my life, personal and professional. And I think that leaning into that change and, taking, being able to, positively take that pathway forward has led me in directions that I hadn't really expected before. So to be a bit brave and, go for the change. And also, I suppose, make sure that there is, I guess, to feel passionate in whatever you're doing. Perhaps, I'm lucky to work for a charity, and I think that lends itself to it. But if you're working in a corporate environment, I think that there are ways increasingly to bring passion and purpose to the working world also, many organisations that we work with, want to actively encourage their staff to have days off to do charitable purposes. And I think there's a great way, and increasingly so, to build kind of passion and purpose. So I would say to my younger 20-year-old self, be willing to accept change and lean into change, and be sure to hold on to the passion and the purpose, because it's been there as a rudder for me in all things professional and personal. And I'd say that is a great kind of life lesson that I've had.
Lisa, thank you so much. We've absolutely loved working with you. We've absolutely loved working with your team, and we hope that I'm sure that you'll continue this great work and continue to make more dreams come true for children across the UK. So, can't wait to get more involved, can't wait to continue to support you. But also, I hope that this session will also resonate with some of our listeners, and you'll also want to get involved and find a way personally, or maybe through your business, of also supporting kids who have it tough through Dreams Come True and the fantastic work they do. So, Lisa, thanks again. Love talking with you, and looking forward to keep working with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Mike. It's been a great interview. I've been very lucky.
Thank you.